Welcome to Concussions. My name is Kirsten and I teach at Venice, and Danna will take over in just a bit to finish up the topic of concussions. We want to make sure that we respect everyone's time. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold the videos for now. If we have time, we will share the videos at the end, or we will make the videos available to you in another form. Okay? So let's chat concussions. If we could, we would put you all in bubble wrap all the time, because that would try to keep you the safest possible. You know, you see all these jokes about different concussions and things like that, and different ways to keep kids safe. And we do joke as athletic trainers about wrapping kids in bubble wrap and sending them out to play that way, or in those giant plastic bubbles. Which now with COVID could be a fun way to play sports. So some basic facts about concussions. We want you to know these things and take these facts home with you and in your brains as you develop your careers as student athletic trainers or medical professionals. A concussion is a traumatic brain injury. There is no way around the fact that it is called a traumatic brain injury. Its name has kind of changed and evolved over the years, but we want everyone to understand that if you've received a concussion, you have injured your brain. All concussions are serious. There is no minor concussion. There's no, I just got a little ding, okay? Concussions can occur without the loss of consciousness or memory. This is a big one, especially if you work with coaches who used to play a sport or haven't been updated with their education about concussions, because they will say, oh, he didn't get knocked out, he's fine. Or he can remember everything, she's fine. But you do not have to be knocked unconscious, and you do not have to lose any memory. Recognizing and managing concussions properly when they first happen is vital to preventing any further injury, and in the worst case scenario, preventing the death of a young athlete. Most athletes are able to return to play, and that's really important for kids to understand. Is they get scared that if I have a concussion, I can never play my sport again, but that's not true. Most kids will return to play safely. There is a recovery process that we will talk about today, but everyone recovers at their own rate. And sometimes people will say, oh, it's been a week, I should be fine. But it may take 4 weeks. It may take a couple months. Every person recovers on their own. In general, the younger you are, the longer it takes you to recover. And that's especially important in the high school kids that we work with. We really want to make sure you are fully recovered. And a lot of people seem to think concussions are still sort of rare, but we see about 4 million of them a year in the United States alone. Okay, so you will see, if we get the chance to show you a video of a bunch of different people getting a concussion. They happen in two ways, typically linearly, either front to back, or the person gets hit from the side and their head spins. And what happens is your brain is sitting in a bath inside of a skull, and it can bounce around. Okay, and you can see in the linear picture that the brain is moved towards the front on when his head is back, but when his head is forward, the brain is pushed back against the back of the skull. And that's what happens, is there's some space for your brain to stay safe, but it also slides around a bit. What is a concussion? A concussion is a blow to the head or body, but no direct impact is necessary. There is a acceleration, meaning going fast, and then a deceleration, meaning stopping force, that causes your axons in your brain to temporarily change. There's usually some form of stretching or tearing. There are what we call neurometabolic changes that are so tiny we can't see, and especially we can't necessarily see with a CT scan or an MRI. Many of you who have had a friend have a concussion and go to the emergency room, You may have heard them say, well, I had a CT scan. It was negative, so I don't have a concussion. And that's not how we diagnose them. It's a combination of signs, symptoms, and an evaluation. The CAT scan in the emergency room or the CT scan is telling us whether you're bleeding in your brain, because that's a different kind of emergency. There are physiologic changes at the cellular level in your brain. And this is important when you think about the fact that your brain is what's responsible for your entire body system working. So if there are these little tiny cellular changes, we want to make sure that you recover. And neurons, we will say that they become dysfunctional. The nice thing is they're not destroyed. So that means we can recover and the athlete can recover. And if you ever get a chance to talk to a gentleman by the name of Dr. Giza, Mark knows him from UCLA. We get to work with him at Venice. He runs their big concussions program at UCLA. Did you happen to know that there are laws on the books in every state that protect kids if they're injured? We're going to show you a story, if we get a chance to it, about a young man in Washington, and his injury led to the first state law protecting kids from concussions. That law is now expanded, and we have it in all 50 states and in the state of California. It happened for us in 2010. That is when CIF, which is the group, if you have anyone who plays sports, or if you play a sport, you always hear us talk about CIF. They're the ones who came up, helped with the law and passing bylaw 313. That means anyone who gets hurt has to come out, and they can't go back to play unless they have signed documentation from a healthcare provider that knows how to deal with concussions, as well as go through a return to play protocol, which is a gradual return, which you'll see in a little bit. Now, we think concussions are so important, and we want to make sure our student athletes are protected, that it's even turned into education code for the state of California. So there is no way anyone can ever argue with you anymore if you suspect a concussion. It's a state law. It's California code. If they think a kid has been injured, they must be removed. They can't come back until they've seen a doctor and gone through a return to play. And every season before you start your season, you have to read and sign off. You, your parents, and your coaches have to read and sign off that you understand the ramifications of all of this. Okay? And I will now pass over to Danna.
All right. Can I share, Keith?
You have to change to present.
Got it. I did, I thought.
It's okay.
Maybe not.
Up to next to share.
I'm struggling. Struggle's real, people.
Next to share.
I'm hungry.
You got it.
Yeah. Okay. So as Kirsten said, she talked about how concussions occur, direct blow, indirect blow. But when we suspect a concussion, we start immediately with our concussion assessment. And that means when we're running out on the field, or if the athlete walks into our clinic, or if someone comes and gets us and says, Miss Dye, I think someone has a concussion. I think Johnny has a concussion. But immediately what we're going to do is, if the athlete is conscious, we're going to make sure they're responsive by, and even though they're conscious, they may not be responsive. All right. We've had both. So we're going to start questioning the athlete. Hey, what's going on? Now, if it's not my athlete, again, I'm going back to Monica's presentation. I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Miss Dye. I'm from Centennial. What's your name? Can you tell me what's going on? Now, if they look at you dazed and confused, we're going to start from the beginning. If I know their name, I may still ask, what's your name? All right, do you know what date it is? Do you know what day of the week it is? We're already starting with the list of questions that's part of one of our major assessments that we use. All right, where are you? All right, who are you playing right now? Or if they're doing really well, let's ask them a tougher one. Who did you play last game? All right, who did we play last Friday night? And then give them time. All right, and if you know your athlete, keep watching. Are they off? Are they answering slowly? Or is this their normal? I mean, I'll have the doc come out with me and they'll look at me and I'm like, oh, no, this is normal. Give him about 5 minutes. He'll get the answer. All right. We have different rates that our brains function normally. So this is when you need to get to know your athlete. All right. Now, even if we saw what happened, all right, even as a student athletic trainer, you want to ask the athlete if they know what happened. All right. If they don't, they could have a little bit of, maybe they blacked out. Maybe they say, or they're going to, I don't know what happened. What happened? All right. Right here, we're getting our answers. Now we're going to continue with our assessment because we need to legally, and we need to make sure we're thorough in this day and age for the health and safety of the athlete. All right. Then we get into signs and symptoms. Do you have a headache? Any blurred vision? Are you nauseous? Okay. Now leading into those physical symptoms, remember, a sign is something you can see. All right. I can see, like Bobby said, I can see an open fracture. I can see the bone sticking out. I can't see a concussion in the middle of their brain. So we're relying on symptoms, what they feel, the answers they give us. Okay. Do you have a headache? It might just be pressure in their head. All right. Now, if they're doing everything right and someone else came up and no one witnessed a hit and they have pressure in their head, you might want to ask them, have you had a cold lately? Maybe they do have a sinus infection. All right. Think outside of the box, people. But we're dealing, like Kirsten said, with underage athlete. Anybody under the age is 23, now it's kind of 25. We want to make sure that brain is still growing. We want to allow it to continue to grow. All right. Do they have dizziness? Now, sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not dizzy. But yet you watch them walk to the other sideline. You watch them disoriented. You watch them struggle getting up and then falling back down. Okay. This is what you need to pay attention. Your eyes need to be doing what your head is doing and taking all this information and categorizing it. All right. This is and believe me, this isn't taking 10 minutes. This is taking 30 seconds of your time. All right. Are you nauseous? We can see vomiting. That's a sign. But symptom is, are you nauseous? This is a big one that I've been seeing a lot in my student athletes. Are you sensitive to light or are you sensitive to noise? Is it getting really loud out here or are the lights too bright? Now, immediately after the injury, they might not be feeling these symptoms, but when they return to you the next day, because I have my athletes return to me or I give my parents just look for a change in their athlete, all right? Do they get really sensitive? Do they prefer to stay in the dark? Do they not have, the music up, or they can't stand watching the TV because it's too loud, it's too bright? Those are signs and symptoms, people, all right? Any numbness or tingling down into the arms, legs, anything like that. Then we have to think that, okay, there's a possibility that we have a spinal injury with it. If they walk toward you, guess what? Our spine's looking pretty good, but let's make sure by asking this question. Don't skip this. You never know if they have an underlying cervical issue that's pressing on the spinal cord. Okay? Are they feeling tired or slow? Are they feeling just off? All right. We were in a state championship game. and somebody came into the locker room at halftime, and the running back coach came up to me and said, Miss Dye, you need to check on Barrington. Something's wrong. So I went over, and he's like, what? Everything's just moving really slow, Miss Dye. We removed him, all right? He did have a concussion, okay? What do you see about the athlete? Do they appear dazed and confused, all right? Do they repeat questions? Another time we were at state with basketball, one of our kids hit their head on the floor. We knew immediately that we had a problem. Again, state law requires, even if they say I have a headache, you're done for the day, all right? You are done. I'm sorry. I'm bound by law. I love this law. I love it. Before, we had to argue with the athletes and the parents. Now, we just say, well, take it up with your congressman, all right? So my athlete kept saying, look, Miss Dye, we got brand new bags. That is great, Dominique. And then it was 2 seconds later, look, Miss Dye, we got brand new bags. 20 minutes of this, and finally I said, Mom, will you please take him to the emergency room, all right? Answers questions a little bit slowly, more so than normal, all right? They're really trying to recall what's going on. And maybe they can't recall injury, any events prior to the injury, all right? That's called retrograde amnesia. We don't see this very often, but it can happen. Or it's amnesia. We can't recall events after. I don't know what's happening, all right? Sometimes they could lose consciousness. We don't see this very often. We've had a lot. Football creates a lot. Any kind of contact sport, you have a higher risk, all right? Sometimes they'll come off and say, I blacked out. I feel like I blacked out, all right? We have a problem, all right? Houston, shut them down, okay? Now, I have not seen this. I have seen athletes cry after an injury like this. So I don't know whether it's because I'm sorry you're done for the day for a state game and they're crying because they've lost it out, or this is a change in their personality. If they become aggressive with you and that's not them, this is a sign, all right? Let's monitor these people. Now understand, when you suspect a concussion, you're going to have to recheck with that athlete all the time. This is an injury that I contact parents right away. And I say, come get your baby, all right? Come get your baby. And this is what, it's not an emergency, but I would just like you to monitor your baby, because sometimes it's just us by ourselves out there. Or I will stick one of you guys, thank you for being there, with my student athlete. And I say, watch what's going on, okay? Forgets common knowledge. Doesn't remember the class schedule, doesn't remember they had a test, even though that's not really common, but you never know, okay? What are we gonna do on the sideline? Documentation is mandatory for us. And even if I'm not there, take out your phone, student athletic trainer, and start typing it in. What's the name of the athlete? If you don't know the name of that freshman, ask the freshman. If he doesn't remember his name, because yes, I had a freshman from one of the local high schools that wasn't mine say, I don't remember my name. He just didn't want to play Centennial against Centennial anymore. But, all right, this is when you ask other people, and documentation is important. All right, most of us at the high school level use what's called a SAC form, all right, Standard Assessment for Concussion, all right? Sometimes there's also a form, it's commonly used for us because you can do it in 7 minutes. That's pretty quick. And it's smooth, and it's right there. I'm going to show you guys one, all right? But usually, it's just an easy way to do it. We're comfortable with it. My students can do it if I don't have the time or if I'm trying to do multitask. But another form is called the SCAT-5 form. That's kind of a more invasive form where it's got the questions asked, you do the neurological testing, the follow, it's called VOMS, all right? VOMS is next, but it's more in depth. So it requires a lot more time. That we can do in the clinic, no problem. They walk in the next day, say, I've had a headache since yesterday, halfway through practice, and then I get angry and say, why didn't you come to me then? But this is when we'll do a SCAT-5. Now, I like to be consistent though, so a lot of times I'll refer back to my SAC. Now, if they do really well on my SAC and I'm still not happy with what they're telling me, I will also perform what's called a BEST test, a balance error scoring system. This can be done on the field in modified form. It can be done in the clinic. And let me tell you, we want to make sure we're thorough, all right? Because when we send them to the doctor, because we are sending them to the doctor and we need to give mom and dad some information, let's give them documentation information. And then they're just standing looking at you going, oh, you actually took time with my baby. Okay, all right. But this is also quick. So you can do it and it's easy to do and there's actually instructions, all right? But know your athlete. If your athlete doesn't have balance worth crap in the first place, they're not gonna do well. Now, here's the key. If your athlete doesn't do well on the sack or is not feeling good at all, don't put them through the best. You're already done. Don't do it. All right, don't stress your athlete out more. If you stress them out, they're going to not like you and not like themselves. And it could create a more substantial emergency situation if they get a little bit more anxious. Okay, this is a SAC, a standard assessment of concussion, Form A. They come in different forms because sometimes they remember this, all right? And we look for orientation, what day it is. These are all the questions that I asked while I was on the field, all right? But guess what? I'm gonna ask the athlete, hey, we're just gonna go through this real quick. Don't be stressed out, and tell them it's not a pass or fail. It's okay. It's fine. Answer them to the best of your ability. So it's the day, the time, the date, all right? Then we're going to go to the immediate memory. We're going to give them words to remember, 5 of them. We're going to ask them 3 times in a row, all right? So they should get better, okay? Sometimes they don't. Again, not a big deal, all right? Then we could do some exertional movers to put them in a little bit of stress to go to the next one, which is also neurological screening, when we can find out how they're feeling. Concentration. This is the numbers backwards. I can't get through 3 and 4 on the lines, all right? I don't know how they do it. I've had people actually ace this. I've had 3 in my career actually go through the whole thing after a blow to the head and do really well. And I'm like, I can't find anything. I can't do that, all right? Now, all of these are giving you scores. You get a point for every time you do it right. You circle a 0 for when they can't do it right. All right, and then delayed recall. We're gonna go back to the immediate memory, all those words, and we're gonna ask them again because we've done all this stuff in between. Now, do you remember those 5 words I gave you? Wagon bubble, all of those? And they're like, and you don't have to say them in order, all right? Don't stress them out, okay? So then we're gonna come down and we're gonna add all those scores together and we add up to a score of 30, all right? Now, if they didn't have a baseline test, which a lot of them can tank the baseline tests, there's a little bit of research out there right now that's saying, maybe we don't use it, all right? I like to use 25 and up, all right? My IB kids, they should be killing this. But my other kids that are, 2.0, well, maybe 25 is a good score for them. And they've answered, and they answered quick, and they're normal, and they did well on the BEST test. All right, here's the BEST test. We're gonna do this. The top one is on the floor, shoes off, all right? It's 20 seconds with your eyes closed, hands on your hips. You're gonna count the number of times the clinician, the one who's watching, when the hands leave the side, that's a time that they get counted for. Foot touches the ground, tag off. Eyes open, tag off, okay? They get 30 chances to touch the ground, till hands leave the side, all right? For them to actually fail this test, all right? But if they can't stay up at all in a single leg, we got a problem, all right? So we can modify this because a lot of times on the second aspect of this test, we do them on a foam pad, and that's in my clinic. But I'm not taking my foam pad out to the field, all right? So we'll modify it and just do the top, and we'll go with the top, all right? But again, remember, this is bombs, all right? Even if they're not doing well or they've done really well on all these tests that you've done on the field, if they have signs and symptoms, they're going to the doctor, okay? This is gaining popularity. This is vestibular oculomotor screening, VOMS, and it takes 5 to 10 minutes. It needs the total attention of me, all right? The medical personnel, the clinician needs to pay attention to this, all right? I can do this in my clinic, not a problem, all right, if I have other medical personnel with me. But this is a demonstration of how it's done, and this is an actual score sheet that they give you that you can do with it. These are all concussion assessment tests, all right? Again, don't stress your athlete out. Pay attention to what's going on. You know your athletes better than we do, all right? Kristen's already gone over our CIF regulations, and we have excellent, this is our return to learn that our schools have to follow, and we're blessed with this. I actually had a teacher, and I teach on campus. He goes, "Are you sure that I have to modify?" I went, "Yes, it's state law, sir." So we have an actual grid to follow and make sure that our athletes, and this is the one that we follow, all right, return to play. If you'll notice, it's changed in the last 2 years. Now they can have some symptoms, they just can't get worse when they are starting the return to play. But when a doctor says they're released for return to play, they're released, and we have to follow this day by day. You can't skip steps, and you can't condense them 2 into 1 day. It takes at least 7 to 9 days for this to happen. And that's after being sign and symptom free for 24 to 48 hours. I say 48 hours because you guys are young. Your brains are young. There's no reason for us to push it. Okay, I'm right on time, people.